Hello and welcome to another episode of Contemporary Living Live, where we provide lifestyle solutions for everyday people. Yes, we are. I'm going to claim it. We are the platform of champions. We are the platform for champions. What kind of champions you say? Life champions. Yes, you, me, everyone that's watching, and I just want to say thank you for watching, and while right now you could be tuned in anywhere else. We appreciate the fact that you've chosen to be here with us, and we want to honor that by bringing you a great show tonight. And it's going to be a really great show tonight, you guys. But first, I want to do some housekeeping notes. You can always watch any episode of Contemporary Living on E360 TV. You can watch us on Facebook or YouTube, any of our past episodes. And if you want to contact us directly, you can go to info@contemporarylivinglive.com. That's info@contemporarylive.com. We are not hard to find. And, we love hearing from you. So, call us, text us, do something, communicate with us. But now, of course, I want to give a shout out. So I'm going to add something to the stream here. All right. So I want to give a shout out. We always give a shout out to businesses, but today we are putting the spotlight on the self-care boss, Elmira Lofton, and her Angels of Touch Grief Massage campaign. The Angels of Touch campaign is providing 200 massages to those who desperately, are in need of self-care. And while many people, we're celebrating this season, a lot of us are celebrating this season, but let's not forget that there are so many people in need right now today. I mean, someone just lost a job. A mother or a father, or a mother and a father just lost their child. Someone is dealing with, a breakup of a long-term relationship. Someone right now is fighting to overcome an addiction. and someone is contemplating suicide, there are so many people in need right now today. And it's so crucial that we don't overlook the needs of others. And that's why, Angels of Touch has an opportunity that you can be a part of in support of those who are grieving or going through something in life. Right now you can give up to $200, and that will go to help someone in need of a 2-hour massage. Yes, 2-hour grief massage is what they call it, which includes treatments like energy healing, sound healing, and active listening. And so the Angels of Touch, the massages, they make people smile. It lightens their burdens, and it helps people. And they also help to create a self-care plan for moving forward for those who are grieving or those who want to try to overcome things. So you can become a donor by sending your donations to www.theselfcareboss.com/giving, or you can cash app it to the $ in cash app massage concierge. So we'll put that in the comments section during the program. So although they're located, Self Care Boss is located in Middle Tennessee, they are networked through this campaign nationwide. So if you want to support this campaign, please do. Again, that's Angels of Touch Grieving Massage Campaign. And, I just love great causes, and I think that this is one of them. And then the Self Care Boss will be back on the show because she's come, she's a death doula. So she's come on the show before. So she will be on the show this February, and we look forward to receiving the update on that campaign. Now, I think the Angels of Touch is a great segue into tonight's discussion. So, Oluwatoyin Alubisi Hines, or Dr. Toyin, as I reference her, is the owner and founder of Peace of Mind Counseling, Coaching, and Consulting, Igniting Tuition, Mind, Body, Soul, Grace Revealed Ministry, and the Woman Cave Fellowship. She is also a retired Brigade Army National Guard chaplain. So salute to you, ma'am. Yes, she is an Army veteran. Dr. Toyin provides counseling and training to leaders and groups in psychotheological integration. She also engages in community training to those who serve veterans, families, communities, and individuals. As a clinician, Dr. Toyin delivers timely and confidential support, counseling, and mental health services to help understand, heal from, and cope with dynamics impacting day-to-day living. Dr. Toyin's journeys with clients using a psychodynamic approach, person-centered care, mindfulness-based practices, coaching, and alternative and integrative models. She supports clients in identifying values, navigating life changes, exploring identity, resolving conflicts, determining boundaries, and healing anxiety, depression, and trauma. That is a lot. This woman does a lot. Dr. Toyin offers trauma-informed yoga training for healing and transcending sexual trauma. She delivers wellness tools and techniques on her podcast, YouTube channels, and other social media platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Toyin. Woo!
Hello. How are you?
Now, let me tell you guys who are watching, this is not the first encounter that Dr. Toyin and I have had. We have done some veterans events together. And if you have ever just seen her, and I'm just gonna, for lack of a better word or medical term for a Dr. Toyin, if you ever seen her just do her thing, just talk to an audience, how engage. Well, you'll see it tonight. We had a brief conversation earlier, and I got some personal nuggets. I love what I do because I get to get a little bit of insider information. So I love that. But we are just so grateful to have you on the show, Dr. Toyin, and I'm just ready to get into it. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me here this evening to
Man,
appreciate the conversation.
I'm so happy that we could just make this happen. So of course, I like to start with, you didn't just come out, hey, I'm Dr. Toyin as a child. You know what? You didn't just pop out, yeah, Dr. Toyin at your service. So tell us a little bit about the journey of becoming Dr. Toyin.
My journey, a lot of people hear all the things that I do, and they're quite interested to know that first of all, a lot of people assume I'm Nigerian. I am not, although I am immersed in the culture, as you can see. My family's from the South. My family's by way of Memphis, Mississippi, Arkansas.
What? You took the name too. It's the name too.
My name is Nigerian.
Yeah.
Everybody else has Southern names, Mary Lee, Gloria Jean, and such. So
you had to come out. I mean, you were special from the beginning.
Yeah, and it has a special meaning. My name actually means God is worthy of praise and wealth comes forth, joy is multiplied. But I always tell that story that my name is Nigerian, but I am not born of Nigeria, although I have some real traditional cultural connections in terms of my practices to the culture. But on as far as my upbringing, I grew up in the projects in the city of Chicago. We grew up in Stateway.
What projects was it?
Stateway Gardens and and then raised in Inglewood.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So I mean, I grew up on
that is so side. Interesting.
So I told my journey, my path in life, started there. A young teenage mother who did her best to raise her children, my brother and I, and a father who I happened to meet when I was 9 years old. I had a stepdad who tried to be present as best he could, and we still try to have our daddy-daughter breakfast and such. And so, the life of a girl who was raised in the inner city, and I happened to go to a high school in the inner city. I went to Robeson High School, and I worked really hard to stay a nerd, and I did. I was a valedictorian. I ranked one all 4 years. Went off to college at U of I in Urbana. And I didn't do too well in college.
Oh, wow.
To be fair, not until I actually joined the military while I was in college.
Okay.
And when I came back, I joined at 19 in college. And while I didn't do too well, when I came back, I was a bit more disciplined. I think that shift in joining the military. And I joined the military because I needed money for school.
Right.
That's
so many people's story. Everyone needed money for school or, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The GI Bill wasn't much. It was like $300, but I paid tuition. And so, that was my story. And I, stayed. And when I came back, that's when the opportunity shifted for me. In undergrad, I was able to engage academically a little bit differently. I was able to connect with some professors who I began to flourish. That's when I got immersed in African studies and African American culture, began to do some research with some professors at school. And that's academically where the trajectory of my life began to change. I also then decided to drink the Kool-Aid and become an officer. Yeah. So I was enlisted first.
Yeah.
And decided to become an officer, branched quartermaster when I went through OCS. So I was in the National Guard at the time, and I,
and for those who are watching, OCS stands for Officer Candidate School.
Thank you. And drank that Kool-Aid, and it was sour, but I did it. But it was also that time of my life when I began to understand misogyny, sexism, racial,
Mhm.
systemic racism in the military, um, in basic training, sexual trauma in the military, all those things, and didn't really understand all of it until later in my career, but knew what something was happening around my
Yeah.
career. Um, and so some of these trauma narratives were formulated um, during those parts of my life, as
Mhm.
well as growing up, in the inner city as well. When I graduated from college, I stayed an additional 2 years because I had an opportunity to do some research. And that's why I earned 2 bachelor's degrees,
Okay.
because I stayed on, did some additional work. Plus, I had the money with
Mhm.
which one. So I'm like, let
Yeah.
me get another degree since I
That's
could.
important. Yeah.
But I also applied to one school. Me going away to the University of Chicago, I went into. Yeah, this is a funny story, and I'll shorten it because I know we have to get on with the program. But I went, and I think this rides on where we're going in our story
Mhm.
today about transcendence and such. I went to one of the counselors, one of the career academic counselors I had at U of I, and I said, well, I graduated from OCS, and I decided that I was going to be a military chaplain because I didn't
Mhm.
like quartermaster. And I said, the requirements where you have to have a master's in divinity. So I'm like, well, I have to go to div school. I might as well. I want a master's degree, so I might as well do that. And I'm like, well, I want to be a historian. That was the path.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'll do this. So I'll apply to the University of Chicago. All of the professors I did research with at the time went to the University of Chicago. So I got them all like they're going to write me these recommendation letters. And the counselor said to me, "You aren't very smart and you're poor, so I don't think you'll get in."
Talk about trauma.
So I walked out of that space, um, and I said, all I remember is seeing is like back in the day, like they had these orange and yellow couches, like the retro looking ones. And I
Mhm.
just said, God, show them. That was and University of Chicago was the only school I applied to. And I got a scholarship to go, and I got accepted.
God showed them.
And I did. And I walked back to our office once I received my acceptance letter. So I got in, I got a scholarship. Now,
Wow.
this was not just um, any academic counselor. This was like the person that you went to because this was the person that encouraged everybody. This was everybody's favorite. So for surely she was going to encourage me, I thought. And
Absolutely.
it didn't happen that way. Even when I was applying to OCS, um uh when I went to the unit, and it was in
Mhm.
Chicago, and all the NCOs, they were like, that you had this captain, of the other
Mhm.
ethnic, and they say, well,
Yeah.
he's saying, tell him you're not going to make it, and you need to show him. So I've had these stations in my life where I could have just said, yeah, they're right. I
Right.
didn't have, and I could have not gone this path. And
Yeah.
so that was grad school, that was OCS, and that's where I am today. Here, all the other things that have occurred in my life, I did graduate from University of Chicago. I did end up going to DePaul to get a degree in education. That was interrupted by deployment.
Yeah. It happens.
I didn't become a teacher
It
like I
happens.
planned, but I did do curriculum study, so I write my own curriculum for things that I do. I did earn a doctorate in pastoral studies.
Mhm.
The military did send me to Fort Benning, Georgia. I was the family life chaplain for the Illinois National Guard, so that did get me to get my counseling degree.
Mhm.
And so that's the life, that's the path. So
Right.
how did I get here? All of that.
Yeah.
That's what led me here. What's my mission?
Yeah.
Um, to transcend healing. I think the path of healing that I've been on in my journey has all of that has led to my own. I did not know. I tell I was the go-to chaplain for
Right.
things. And I did not know that I had trauma. I did the critical crisis stuff, the suicide intervention stuff, the um, death notification stuff, the
Wow.
you know, I've had service members complete suicide, homicide.
Hmm.
I did the hard things. I have had colleagues who've done the hard things. I
Hmm.
was the chaplain who supported my colleagues when they did the hard things. I
Hmm.
sat with people in the middle of their grief and loss, and all of that. Had to tell people difficult narratives on how their loved ones died. I've done those hard things, experienced trauma of my own, and transcending still. And so when
Right.
we talk about what is my mission, it is how valuable is it that you walk a life of wellness
Yeah.
in any moment of your life, to know that triggers still exist. Like triggers show up whenever they want to. They don't ask permission.
Right.
Can I interrupt this wonderful holiday that you would like
Right.
to have?
Right.
And,
Right.
not if do you mind if I
Right.
interrupt this event you're about to
Right.
attend? It does not. Triggers don't ask permission, they just appear.
Hmm.
And how is it that I use skills that I've been taught that are around the continuity of my wellness?
Hmm.
And that is why I do what I do. Um, that is why I do the
Wow.
work.
That I find, I mean, that's so amazing. So while you are doing, as a chaplain, serving as a chaplain, you had your own
Mhm.
trauma to deal with. Were you aware? Like you said, you went through all and what it reminded me, you went through all the check the block, you made sure everyone did
Mhm.
what they were supposed to do. But were you aware of your own trauma at the time that you had to provide counseling or, to others?
So there are two parts of me. There was a part that time in my life when I was not aware whatsoever.
Hmm.
And then
Right.
there's the part of my life when I am aware.
Hmm.
And I can tell you about both. The part of my life when I was not aware, I was, we call it hypervigilance,
Hmm.
and I was the best performer.
Ah,
I was everybody's go-to.
yeah.
And then I would crash and burn and not appear for days
Yeah.
because I called it I was tired.
Mm.
I was resting, I was resetting so that I could go again so I can crash and burn again.
Wow.
And so that was the routine. However, systemically, as it relates to military culture, that's normal.
Right.
Well, I retired 3 years ago.
Right.
Well, 2 years ago. I retired 2 years ago.
Hmm.
And when I tried to do that as a retiree, it did not fit in my
Yeah.
retirement world.
Yeah.
And so I had to redefine the person that I wanted to become.
Hmm.
And so I realized that works well in some environments, first responders,
Right.
helping professions such as emergency workers, nurses, individuals who work in
Hmm.
those spaces. That works well in those professions when you're having to be on response mode.
Yeah.
It doesn't do well when you are a part-time therapist slash content creator who works from home, or it doesn't work well during a pandemic.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
that's the shift. Mhm.
Wow. So I know and what your story made me realize is there are other people that may not even recognize their own trauma
Mhm.
in their own life. They may not, they're just going through the motions. So can let's, and then especially around the holidays, so can we discuss like some mental health and wellness for the holidays and
Mhm.
recognizing your own trauma?
Well, first I want to kind of destigmatize the construct of trauma and what that
Okay.
means, right? So when we talk about the term trauma itself, we talk about a event that when I do an assessment, like when I do a life events checklist, we talk about different events that may have happened to you, that you witnessed, that you heard about. These events can be anything from a car accident to a fire to environmental hazards to assaults. We're talking about assaults with weapons or a sexual assault, things like that. So when we define trauma, we're talking about the events itself. When we're talking about the criterion around it, we're not talking about a diagnosis now, right?
Right.
We're just talking about an event.
Right.
And so, the reason I'm posing is like, so we're not talking about a diagnosis, we're talking about the event that happened. When we're talking about a diagnosis around depression or anxiety, like symptoms of depression or anxiety, we're talking about feeling down or being lethargic or tired or feeling anxious or things like that. So I just want to be clear about what we're talking about.
Yes.
So you may have experienced some of the events and you may have some of the emotions or feelings. I'm not doing diagnosis right now. Okay. So just look.
Right. This is not a diagnosis. We're just kind of talking about it. You're educating us around it.
Yeah. Gotta give the caveat.
This is not a diagnosis. Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so when we're talking about these experiences that we have around the holidays, what we have to notice what's showing up in our lives right now. Like what's like grief, right? Around the holidays is a really interesting time for some people, difficult time for individuals who've lost loved ones.
Yeah.
I mean, we think about the impact of COVID and the number of lives that were lost during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We can't forget those lives. Military combats and expeditions and campaigns, the number of lives of loved ones who've been lost around those, world conflicts, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And individuals remember the loss of the loved ones. I go deeper as a provider when I talk to individuals. We not only think about the loss of loved ones, we remember what we were thinking, what we were feeling, what we were sensing, all of the memories that were connected to those individuals around the time. Let's not go into the other traumas that have occurred around these, like anybody experienced combat or sexual trauma or any other loss. There are numerous types of losses. So we have these somatic or sensory experiences that come along with the memories. And so how is it that we're navigating for ourselves? How do we recreate? What is it that we need for ourselves to be able to manage it? And then what are we telling other people around us what we need from them, right? Are we asking others for that sacred space? Like one thing I'm really adamant about when I engage others in either in therapy or even in my personal life is I ask them, when you come to me and say, come on, cheer up, feel better. I'm like, are you asking me to do that because you're uncomfortable?
Oh, you know what? I want to pause it right there. I want to jump right back into this topic right here about, other people being uncomfortable with issues and traumas that we may have, because we've got to go to a commercial break. But you guys, I want you to share this episode, like and share right now. We're talking with Dr. Toyin. This is a very important topic, healing the invisible wounds of life. All right, we will be right back. Okay, it looked like I was in part of that commercial, but we want to thank our sponsors, Andre the Realtor, My Sip Nation, Blue Pearl Candle, and author Felicia Portwood, The Cost of Disobedience. So we will, if you want to become a sponsor of our show, we make some great commercials. I love all of our commercials. Go ahead and get in contact with us at info@contemporarylivinglive.com. That's info@contemporarylive.com. You guys, we are now talking about, talking with Dr. Toyin, talking about, our healing journey of the invisible wounds, because we all have invisible wounds. And you guys, she's going deep into it, educating us on, what to look for, what we can look out for. She's not giving diagnosis. I just want to make that clear, but she is educating us on some things we may not know, and maybe maybe some tools and tips on what we can do for the holidays. So again, like and share this program, and let's go ahead and bring Dr. Toyin.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Muted. Okay, I'm not muted anymore. All right, but Dr. Toyin, thank you so much for that first half hour. Someone said that's a mighty question. That's a mighty question. But yeah, if you do have questions, go ahead and send your questions in. But where we left off, and what I want to tell you, Dr. Toyin, you will see your commercial. We have a commercial for you. You'll see it in 2 weeks, January 1st. So look out for that. But where we left off, it was getting really deep, because it was like, how people say, just cheer up. You know what? Just, it'll be okay. Think positive, positive energy. They have the shirts, good vibes only. So that but you said something about that before we left. And what was your statement? What did you comment? What did you say?
Like it's really distinct from the good vibes only, right? Like that good vibes only is like, don't bring negative energy my way. And I'm very clear about that. Like, yeah, I don't have time for that negativity. And I think that part of what I was alluding to is there are times during the holidays where we are processing our own things, how we heal, our independent journeys of healing. Our paths are all different and unique. And there are times when individuals want us to be how we were before different events occurred in our lives.
Yeah.
They remember how we were before we were impacted by something or someone even. And because they want that version of us back, they're always saying, what's going on? Let me cheer you up. Let me let you feel better. Let me do. And because they want us to get back to the semblance of what we were, and oftentimes to fit the version of who we were to meet their need of comfort.
So it's not even about me with the situation, with what's happening to me. It's the other person needing to feel comfortable.
And sometimes it is. Let me provide it by way of example. If you have every family, we talk about this in terms of family systems. Every person in a family system has a designated personality, a designated role, how they fit, how they function, and it's not always fixed, right? It can't be fixed because we grow up and we change over time. However, there are certain parts of us that are just pretty constant, right? I, in my family, am the military-minded kind of person. Everybody knows I can get a little bit silly sometimes, but for the most part, I'm the critical thinker, pretty straightforward. And now, because I'm retired, I like to cook, right? And sometimes I like to host. But you can always count on me to change something at the last minute. You can definitely count on me to do that. You can definitely count on me in the past to say, no, I'm not showing up.
Yeah.
And so because I show up now, because I now show up, people are shocked.
What you doing here?
What are you doing here? You're showing up, you're here. And so now it's a surprise.
Yeah.
But imagine I stop showing up again. Then people will start doing things. Come on, why don't you come out? What's going
Yeah.
on?
Yeah.
What's because that makes them feel comfortable with me
Yeah.
being there without asking me the questions of, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything we can do to support you? Did something
That's
happen?
major.
Did something happen that you're not present? You were present. I know you weren't present before. And then you got back to being present again. Can we support you in knowing, do you want to tell us what happened? Did something happen?
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that you need from us?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can just get you back to just getting to it again,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're coming from a pathological family, so there they go again, back to
Mm.
doing what they used to do.
Yeah.
And if in family systems we cannot name the truth about what is or what's happening, and now and I'm gonna just be I'm the kind of provider, like I don't sugarcoat like what like I'm
Right.
so
Straightforward. Yeah.
I'm very straightforward of the process. So even in when I'm
That
in
saves
this,
time, doesn't it?
what well, I guess,
Yeah.
suppose.
Right.
But when it happens in the session room and people are asking these questions about, my family doesn't get it and they don't understand, and I go to the person, like you are responsible for the psychoeducation that happens in your family
Mm-hmm.
around the trauma. You don't have to tell them the story,
Right.
but you can educate them about your needs related to the experience. How
Mm-hmm.
do we do that in a clever way without telling
Mm.
them all the content?
Right.
So to speak the truth, it's like there are days when I'm really tired
Mm-hmm.
and there are days when I'm not.
Right.
Because I served, I have to sleep more than you because the military told me to add 20 years to my body
Mm-hmm.
because of the heavy baggage I had to carry when they told me to put one rock on the back and a duffel bag on the front.
That's right.
So because I carry more baggage than you will have in your life, the weight is different for me than it was for you. What I'm trying to say is my experience is different from yours.
Right.
See,
Right.
I don't have to give you the real content.
Mm-hmm.
With those rucksacks came trauma.
Right.
But I can tell you I need a little bit more rest and a little bit more time. And what I'm asking you for, family, is if I don't want to come that day, doesn't mean I don't love you. I just need time. Can you give me time?
Yeah.
And so if I don't show up, or we just had a loss in our family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so for the one who it hits the most is, can you show them some grace and just give them a call every now and then without
Yeah.
complaining about what you think they are?
Right.
So the question becomes, when we talk about this in construct of wellness, what
Mm-hmm.
does not what is therapy? Because I tell people all the time, therapy is not what happens in that session. Therapy is what you do at home. Wellness follows. Those are the
Mm.
skills that you implement along the way. The wellness is, how do I learn to speak to myself so I educate and model to people what I need. So as the holidays are coming along and I'm feeling some kind of way, I first have to
Mhm.
be aware of what that is.
Right.
Because once I'm able to name that from myself, then I'm able to teach you how to treat me.
Right.
So if then I'm the giver, if I'm the joy giver of all the gifts, because my value is joy. I just love giving gifts.
Mm-hmm.
That does
Mm-hmm.
not mean I'm giving gifts so you can take advantage of me all year.
Right.
That means I'm gift giving because I like the holidays. I like
Right. Right.
Hanukkah. I like Kwanzaa. I
Mm-hmm.
like Christmas. I like this time of year. Makes me feel good. Just I want to give.
Mm-hmm.
But if the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the year I'm out of sync with it, don't don't manipulate the energy or the
Right.
joy. It's something different. Or if I'm in another place emotionally in terms so this is how we get through the holidays. One,
Mm-hmm.
we are aware.
Mm-hmm.
We're aware of one, our motives and what's driving us through it.
Mm-hmm.
Are we just trying to get by?
Yeah.
Or one, two, are we paying attention to the season change? I don't know if people are noticing the dark days.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about seasonal affective disorder, which means that when it's darker, we do less and we eat more. That's what I call it. But we do less outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of us who are privy to what happens in terms of outdoors, we're more hyper vigilant because it's darker outside.
Right. Right.
So are we aware? But in context of the season change,
Mm-hmm.
of the holiday shifts and what's going on, are we still asking people for what we need around this time? I'm
Right.
bringing it back to that place of awareness. Do we
Mm-hmm.
know ourselves so that we can ask of others? It always goes back. Do we know first
Mm-hmm.
so that we can ask? I'm going to caveat it with this part, or put
Mm-hmm.
a caveat on it with this part. Sometimes we do know and we feel too ashamed to tell anybody or ask anybody for what we need
Right.
because we don't trust
Mm-hmm.
people with the ask.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we have asked in the past, we've been completely disappointed by others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you also say that some people, they do it because, like you said, in families you establish these roles, so everyone has a role, so they do it because I just want to play my role in the family and do you know what I'm saying? Is that part of it too?
Well, it depends on the family system, right?
Yeah.
But
Okay.
then, and again, it's about being aware of what that family system is. How people,
Uh-huh.
and some people remember. Sometimes we have families with one or two, and some we have families that we make up, and some of us we don't have families at all,
Right. Right.
right? And so it depends on what community or family or place or construct you ascribe to, right?
Mm-hmm.
For some people, again, what are you aware of in that system, in that
Right.
space, in that community? What do they ascribe to? What are the rules of that space that you're connected with?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you all say about change?
Right.
Are you aware of what you all talk when a person changes? Like, what are they doing? Like, what's the message that you've received?
Right.
Are you honest about that message?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be honest
Yeah.
about what really does happen in some of these systems.
Mm-hmm.
Even in, I mean, in some of the systems, like when a person does decide to make a change, no matter how subtle or how grand, people have something to say about it,
Always.
whether it's a critique or a compliment.
Yeah.
The awareness piece that I'm referring to is, are you aware of yourself enough to know that it matters to me or not?
Mm.
And how and the values you live about it in relation to it or not?
Mm-hmm.
And the strength and dignity or that you give to it or not. When I use the word strength or dignity, it's like
Mm-hmm.
how much what's the word? It's like an impact or influence or power you give to it or not. Like, what is it that you're deciding in the moment? So,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason I'm drawing this out is that when we're talking about as we grieve, as we walk through trauma or depression or anxiety or all the things that make for some the holidays difficult
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
As we're talking about that, first, are you aware?
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware in context of whatever community or family, etc., that you abide in?
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of how much it impacts you as an individual? Are you aware of how much in your community system or family system that you need to educate others on what your needs are in that
Mm-hmm.
system?
Mm-hmm.
How much information you need to filter?
Mm-hmm.
What is the creative, constructive content you need to offer them?
Mm-hmm.
Enough to create safe and sacred space for everyone.
Gotcha.
And if you need support in that, are you aware of the resources that are available to you to help you guide you to get into that place to do it? Because not everybody can do that alone.
Right. Like I was just thinking about that. But one of the things, like just in through this conversation, what it's helping me to realize is the word grace and
Mm,
extending grace. How critical it is, especially now, to be less judgmental and extend grace, because you don't know what that other
You
person is going through. And I mean, that's even on the street. I mean, and it seems like our attention span now is we get we get triggered by, like, now, because our attention span is not as, you know, as great as it used to be, or as long as it used to be. We get triggered a lot easily. And so, I mean, what I'm just hearing through, I'm hearing everything that you're saying, and it's the word that keeps coming to me is just extending grace during
Mhm.
this holiday. And one of the things, like awareness, that how you just emphasize, like, that's super important.
And I always go back to in the extension of grace,
Mm-hmm.
it begins with, am I aware first
Mm.
of the grace I need to extend to myself? Because if I am not doing it to me first, I cannot do it to someone. I can't do it
Mm-hmm.
with someone, not to, because I can't do
Mm-hmm.
anything to anyone. I can, by invitation, do grace with someone,
Oh
and,
wow.
and I
Mm-hmm.
can, with. So
Right.
if I am showing grace with myself, meaning I can be a little bit more gentle with myself and say,
Mm-hmm.
no, I can't do this extra thing. No,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I can do that extra thing. Yes, I can carve out time with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I can create boundaries around here.
Right.
No, I'm not feeling very well around. And so when I'm showing grace with someone else, and maybe they're being a little bit too pushy,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they're crossing my boundaries so far that it makes me feel discomfort, I can speak truth with love, or
Right.
with loving force, whichever
Mm-hmm.
works.
Right. Right.
Because that's real too.
Mm-hmm.
But I can do it in sacred and safe space,
Right.
knowing that the connection remains after the holidays if necessary. If not, sacred space and grace says maybe that's a relationship where the boundaries will continue to be crossed,
Mm-hmm.
and then and maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe therapy says the relationship needs to be.
Right. And I was going to ask about that, because sometimes, I mean, sometimes, you know, you're aware of what's in your community or within your family,
Mhm,
and now it's time to, like, literally cut ties because it is not healthy for you.
mhm,
Like unhealthy relationships, and there
mhm.
are a lot of people spend a lot of years in unhealthy relationship, but there has to come a time, right, where you
Yeah, I have a whole 8 question self-reflection process on, let's talk about what triggers you to disconnection.
mm,
Yes.
yeah.
There's a lot that of conversation to be had about
Mhm,
what leads to that necessity for
mhm,
necessity for departure. And
mhm.
before you get to departure, you have to talk about what triggers you to disconnection. What's happening in this cycle
Yeah.
we repeatedly do? What's this dance that we're doing that causes us to disconnect, distrust,
Mhm.
that makes us dissolve instead of deepen authentic connection?
Oh, so well, in that conversation, it sounds like, well, maybe something that you think should be disconnected may not necessarily have to be.
Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes we
Mhm.
are connecting, um, we're bonding off of pathologies and don't even know it.
Now, what's pathology for a
Dysfunction.
layman? Ah.
We're bonding off of dysfunction. I'm afraid of something, you're afraid of something, and instead of paying attention to that and loving each other, we're afraid to love each other, and we pull away and we fight each other in a very subconscious way. So we trigger each other to see who's going to fight off the relationship first.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So I want to
I
go
do
to
couples therapy too, so
right. So you know what? It goes without saying, but that's just my opinion. But you know, what are the benefits of counseling?
in my opinion, the benefits of counseling are really, every person possesses within themselves the tools that they need to live the life of wellness they desire.
Mm.
Counseling only awakens you to your tools. They awaken you. It's in there. You have the answers, but like people think counseling is like the therapist is going to fix it. The therapist, it's not a, we don't fix anything. We
Mm-hmm,
say, I
mm-hmm,
have a particular skill set. I'm listening to what you're saying. In listening what you're saying, I'm evoking a response that already exists in you. Now let me help you elicit these skills that I'm going to show you the skills, right? To be able to use. So every time you have this distorted way of thinking, wait, you're doing this every time. Do you notice you're doing that every time? You're doing this every time. You okay? You want to yell at me for telling you you're using it every time? You can yell at me for using it every time. But I bet you yell at everybody else for telling you that you do it every time. But you can practice here so that when
mm-hmm.
somebody else yells at you, you're going to say, my therapist says the same thing. So why don't you listen to what, you don't have to listen to me, but you can yell at me as practice because that's
Mm-hmm.
what people do. They mirror in session what they do in life. And
Mm-hmm.
then they begin to practice, oh, I do that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they begin to consciously undo what they've done all the time with the skills that they're learning.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever noticed, that's what happens. Now we take up, there are other things that people do, like I talked about, these triggers and disconnects.
Mm-hmm.
We awaken those things too, right? These
Wow.
very clever ways of tapping into people's subconscious and somatic symptoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing when we're talking about trauma in
Mm-hmm.
therapy, you awaken some of those somatic experiences, right? Some things like, why are you notice you're tapping your leg like that? Are you notice that you're doing these things like that? We
Mm-hmm.
observe those things. So all we're doing is awakening and noticing and observing and connecting patterns and space and base and all these things. And we're just modeling and showing and observing and connecting. And after a while, I tell clients all the time, are you ready to fire me yet? Because you already know what you need to do to live your life of wellness. You don't have to, I don't do forever clients.
Mm-hmm.
I do not do forever clients. Like, you know what you're doing, just go out in life and do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the path. And
Oh.
that's what therapy should be for, at
Mm-hmm.
least based off of, but I will honestly say there are also ethnic and cultural implications
Mm.
for me that I introduce into the clinical session, and I'm
Yeah.
very clear about that when I practice. So I do present those uh, as a provider into the space. So
Wow. So did we talk about the psychodynamic approach and
okay, so so
focusing
we
forward?
so my
I
psychodynamic
know I have so much I want to touch on, but there's so limited time.
So psychodynamic
Mhm.
psychotherapy, in terms of my approach, is, you mentioned in the intro, it's very person centered,
Yeah.
and really what I do is that it's an integrated integration of different modalities of therapy, pretty
Yeah.
much person centered. But you take the everyday experience of a person,
Yeah.
and you dialogue and engage around that, and you use
Okay.
that. And I mean, I do other models of therapy, cognitive processing therapy,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally focused therapy for couples, prolonged exposure. Those EFT, the other two, CPT and PE, are for
Okay.
trauma informed care, but pretty much for psychodynamic therapy is really taking your everyday lived experience, and I literally work with clients to
Mm-hmm.
magnify it. I mean, it's like blowing it up and
Oh wow.
saying, this is how big you're making this one thing in your life, and I'm
Yeah.
going to make it look so big, and then you're going to be like, well, it wasn't that big. And we
Dr.
just break it
Toyan,
down and make
you
it
will
work.
not believe this. Andre
Yes.
is giving me the cue, like, wrap it up. We put your information down here. We definitely need a part two. I
Sure.
want to thank everyone for watching. Please like and share during this holiday. Dr. Toya, it's been such a pleasure, but we've got to wrap it up because Andre keeps giving me these cues and I'm really trying to listen. And I've got this other list of questions that I want to ask, but I just don't have time. So
Certainly.
thank you so much for showing up and just helping us walk through some of that and educating us on how to, healing those invisible wounds. We put your information down on the ticker so people have seen it.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye. Do well.
Wow, you guys, the time We don't even have time to do anything, but I am going to close out. And as always, we thank God for his blessings and his undeserved merited favor called grace. You know, he gives it to each and every one of us freely every day. And as believers, we know that Christ died, he was buried, and he rose again on the third day for our justification. And all of that is in the word. And I encourage you to pick it up daily. Increase your faith and have confidence and gain confidence in him. And so, on behalf of my hardworking husband that's in the background, Andre Hill, and myself, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a blessed Happy New Year. And as always, be brilliant, be you, be blessed. We will see you January 1st of 2023.